Ladies and gentlemen, it's hard not to be extremely excited right now. The S&P 500 has just had one of the best days in history, up almost 10% after retesting and exploding from the previous all-time high. Bitcoin just got an insane bullish confirmation. These two charts that we told you to keep your eyes on in the previous video have just fired the confirmation that we want to see. Let's dive right into the charts. Let's talk about the news first, because what has just come out today, President Trump has just authorized a 3-month pause or 90-day pause on the tariffs. The markets are going insane over this. This happened just after Trump raised the tariffs on China up to 125%. This is all happening while in the background, but not so much in the background, the US is decreasing its dependence on importing from China. China's population is decreasing in 10, 20 years' time. China alone probably won't be able to sustain the US anyway, so things are going on in the background. The US is increasing its trade with India. Indians, they breed like rabbits, so they're going to have a big enough population to support all of the imports and production that the US needs. And then boom, Trump just came out and said that China wants to make a deal. They're just in the process of figuring it out. So all of this has just exploded out today. Let's look at what the charts are doing. Two major charts, again, that we told you to keep your eyes on. We were extremely bullish in the previous video, and boom, S&P 500 has exploded from the previous all-time high after having one of the worst days or two in history. Look at this candle. The S&P 500 is up between 9 and 10% today, depending on what index you're pricing it on. That is outperforming Bitcoin at this moment in time. And as we've been discussing on the channel, the S&P 500 has been leading the market. There's no way that the S&P 500 is going to have a serious rebound of 10% and get continuation for the rest of the week and the week after. And Bitcoin's not going to go absolutely parabolic right now and go back up to 90K. Insane retest. Everything you need to see over on the weekly time frame. The chart that we talked about that you need to keep your eyes on, the most important chart. And we've got a different version of this chart that we'll talk about a little bit later on in the video and how this looks historically. But in terms of just this chart in this cycle on the weekly time frame, ladies and gentlemen, normally, like, you see a lot of clickbait videos when people say like, oh, this is the most crazy signal since Bitcoin's sin since back here and we should be expecting a crazy implosion. But look at this. Bitcoin's just had a rough month or so, and it's come down to the 50 TMA, and it has beautifully held it. Now, granted, we did come back down to the 50 TMA roundabout here, and it was a little bit more ugly. We slipped through it, we went back above it, but the most picture perfect, we're so bullish. Bitcoin's at 32K. This is a new cycle high. We're coming back for the all-time high. Oh no, it's over. We're coming back down to the 50 TMA. We beautifully back test it and start imploding. We have not seen as much of a beautiful retest on the 50 TMA, which, by the way, if you're new to the channel, we've gone on Bloomberg terminals, we've looked at every single trading strategy known to man that you can incorporate over on Bitcoin, and the 50 TMA strategy by far is the strongest strategy that you can incorporate. It's just statistics, it's not up for debate. Any strategy you can think of, 50 TMA, leave it on autopilot, outperforms everyone. And we've come down to the 50 TMA. We've come down to the bottom of the channel. We've come down to this range where this was previously kind of resistance around the all-time highs, resistance around the new all-time highs, and we've bounced. We've bounced on the channel, we've bounced on these zones, and we've bounced on the 50 TMA, just firing. If we do close a weekly above this is going to be firing one of the most bullish confirmations that we've seen since the confirmation back at $25,000. That is absolutely phenomenal. That is absolutely nuts. 2 videos ago, we were telling you we're extremely neutral. The last video, we were showing you these charts. We were saying, I am now pivoting into extreme bull mode, and boom. We are absolutely full sending it to the upside. And pretty much this is what I think is going to be happening next. Just before that, one other thing. So Trump has also come out and said no other president would have done what I did. Last year, China made $1 trillion worth of trade with the United States, assuming he's talking about in regards to the tariffs. Now he's completely reversed it. China is the one getting cracked over the head with tariffs. The US is decreasing its dependency on China. They are now going to India. They're now setting up new trade deals with India, decreasing dependence on China, getting ready for zero tariffs from both India to the US. And the Indian economy, which is constantly growing in population and cheap labor, is probably in the future going to be able to support the US just as good as China is. So China is getting put out of this picture at this moment in time. I don't think Trump wants that. I think Trump still wants to trade with China in the short term. That's kind of best for everyone at this moment in time. So I do think this deal is going to get sorted out, because if not, Mr. Xi Jinping over here is going to get priced out of the market. Chinese stock market looking nowhere near as good as the US market at this moment in time. So a major shift has happened. Here's what's going on in the lower time frames. On the 4-hour time frame, you can see in the previous video, the confirmation that we wanted to see is you can see all of these horizontal bars marking different kind of points from kind of further zoomed back than you can see in this chart. But where I told you we need to be trading is between these two orange boxes right here. We had one swing failure pattern beneath this, another swing failure pattern, another one, and this over here was another swing failure pattern. We are trading exactly right in the middle of this range again. Like Crypto says, you know, we are exactly, or whatever he says, I can't do his accent, we're exactly where we need to be. Let's get the fixed range volume profile, and we'll show you again why this is a super important level for us to be within. This is the middle of the range. This is the VPVR. This is where all the volume is in the market. This was kind of like an absolute kind of clusterfuck swing failure pattern to the downside, and now we're right back where we need to be. So in my opinion, what's coming next? If we come over to the daily time frame now, let's go on auto, zoom in a little bit, pull up the 50 TMA on the daily time frame. By the way, 50 TMA on the daily is the strongest strategy, not the 50 TMA on the weekly. But weekly, looking at the macro trend, super important. Probably more important than getting above it on the daily. But here's where Bitcoin's heading to next, in my opinion. The 50 TMA, it's a no-brainer, 85,000. First of all, for the next couple of days, all we really need to do is start putting in closes back above 81,000 and $150 approximately. Let's say 81K. Bitcoin starts putting in closes above then. We're back in the range. What happens after a failed move? A failed move equals a fast move in the opposite direction. If we go over to the 4-hour time frame, you can see here. This is the range. What happened when we made a failed move down from this range? Fast move in the opposite direction. We tried to break up. We weren't ready. What happened when we made a failed move above? Fast move in the opposite direction. Failed move above, fast move in the opposite direction. Failed move below, fast move in the opposite direction. Failed move down for both Bitcoin and the SP 500, and this has turned out to be a fast move in the opposite direction. We are absolutely heading back up. So in the short term, of course, closes above 81K, that's what we should talk about first. But where we're heading to after that is going to be the 50 TMA, which we have not managed to get a close above since Bitcoin broke bearish at approximately 97,800. 50 TMA would have told you to go short, stay out of the market, went all the way back down to 74,000. And now we're heading right back up for this level, which is extremely nice with the stochastic RSI completely reset on the daily time frame. Weekly time frame as well, stochastic RSI is completely reset. Monthly time frame for a bull market, stochastic RSI pretty much completely reset. So in my opinion, it's very clear where we're heading up to right now. We're heading up to 85K. In my opinion, we're going to start seeing daily closes above this very soon while we're trading right in this cluster where the VPVR is, and we're going to start seeing a move back up to the almighty resistance, which we have tried to crack many times. That is the top of this range. around about 90k. That's pretty much everything I wanted to share with you today, but let's quick fire through a couple of charts. Daily time frame VIX is seeing an absolute blow off top. Daily stochastic RSI starting to turn down. Lots of room for this to come down. S&P 500 to recover. The VIX is basically the inverse of the S&P 500. Not 100% linear, but when the volatility goes up on the VIX, the S&P 500 goes down. When the VIX tops out and volatility comes down, it marks the bottoms. That's what we're seeing right now. VIX is getting ready to absolutely melt through the floorboards. We're still at 33. Kind of the heart line for the VIX is probably between 10 and 15. Loads of room to move down. Bitcoin weekly time frame, all these charts that we were showing you that you need to keep your eyes on, like the main ones from literally 1 day ago. If we come over to this is another main chart. Weekly time frame, all-time high, all-time high, all-time high. We just back tested it. Boom. And we're sending it up with a confirmation from the 50 TMA. Over on this chart over here, you can see this was the cup and handle, broke to the upside of the cup and handle, sent it to new all-time highs, came back down, retested the 50 TMA. In my opinion, cup and handle is going to play out and start sending to new all-time highs, just like the cup and handle that was playing out over on gold. If we zoom out, boom, it's the exact same thing that we're seeing. Gold is leading the way. I personally don't think that Bitcoin follows gold. I think they're pretty decorrelated. Just looking at everything that's been happening for the past couple of months or so, it's completely proved that there's almost no correlation. But gold on the daily time frame, absolutely full sending it to the upside. And if you don't know what I mean, gold is considered a risk-off asset. When risk goes up, when the VIX goes up, when the S&P 500 crashes, people flock to risk-off assets like gold. Gold has been massively outperforming with all of this economic uncertainty, but nonetheless, Bitcoin's been crashing, S&P 500 has been crashing, crypto's been crashing. Bitcoin is still tied to the S&P 500. It's still mainly tied to tech stocks. Nobody looks at it as digital gold, even though that's what I perceive it to be. Markets don't give a shit about what I think. They don't give a shit about what you think. They've just been following. Bitcoin's been following tech stocks and the S&P 500. That's what it is. At some point in the future, I think that will change, but not now. Nonetheless, lots of kind of healthiness coming back in, massive recovery on gold, very close to its new all-time high. iShares TIPS ETF on the weekly time frame. These are small cap US stocks that aren't included in the S&P 500. S&P 500 isn't the entirety of the US stock market. It's just basically the top 550 or so stocks. It's not actually 500, don't know why, quite strange. But on the iShares TIPS ETF, looking at kind of smaller stocks in the US stock market, boom, massive inverse head and shoulders, looks really healthy, back tested the 50 TMA. Bitcoin over here, this kind of chart, which we zoomed in on earlier, back over here, the ascending channel. This is what it kind of looks like over on the higher time frames. On the monthly, every cycle isn't exactly the same, but it rhymes. Every single cycle top, we form a rounding bottom followed by an ascending channel leading us into new all-time highs. And then once we get into new all-time highs, we break above the ascending channel, and that's where the parabola happens. Rounding bottom, ascending channel, parabola. Rounding bottom, ascending channel, parabola. Rounding bottom, ascending channel. And you can see it a little bit easier over here. We're still in the ascending channel, and of course there's going to be diminishing returns. It doesn't kind of guarantee that we're going to break out to the upside of the channel this cycle, but hey, if we just get to the top, that could be kind of 150, 160k Bitcoin. Everything is firing major bullish at this moment in time. We were switching from major bullish in the previous video. In fact, I pretty much said something like I just went uncomfortably, all out on stock. On spot rather, and it's looking like it's paying off. The market's a giga sending it to the upside. Solana found its support around about that $100 mark, which is good because we didn't have much support down until about $88 and then $70, which wouldn't have been nice at all. On the daily time frame, Solana, after breaking to the upside of the downtrending line of resistance since its previous all-time high at $300, it has refused to break back beneath this. And we're starting to see a bullish engulfing candle right now on Solana. In my opinion, where I think we're going to be heading to next for Solana is the 618 Fibonacci. A couple of other reasons for that. $220 is the exact price target. We do have some quite a lot of volume traded around $200. $200 is a psychological price target. If we come over to the fixed range volume profiles, and to be honest, let's go over to the weekly. You can see from this kind of whole range that we've been in, there's a huge cluster of volume around about $150, and there's a huge cluster of volume around about $200. In the immediate short term, here's where all the volume is. It's right around $145 with another cluster at $200. So there's so much reason why Solana should probably be doubling in price, in my opinion, in the next month or two. Daily time frame for ore, sending it to the upside. This chart, in my opinion, absolutely oversold. Really kind of, in my opinion, I think this is a really good project. Over at $24, really don't think you can go wrong by picking some of this up at these prices. So that's all I've got. Not really much else to show you, not really much else to tell you. I think the news at the start that I talked about is super important, so remember that. The US is cracking China over the head right now. They're reducing their dependence on the Chinese economy. They're switching that over to the Indian economy, which has a growing labor force, cheap labor. They can do pretty much everything that China can do. They're not as technologically advanced, but with the tariffs and a zero tariff policy in India, we can, well, I'm not in the US, but the US can probably get their goods for the same price over in India, and that's what I think we're starting to see a shift to. So I think Xi Jinping doesn't have too long to fight this out. I don't think he wants to see kind of 100%, 125% tariffs on the Chinese economy, and then the US to just decrease their dependence on them and then go and trade with China. I think at some point soon, we're probably going to see a net neutral tariff policy with kind of some more peace kind of going on between what's happening with China and the US. And I just think as soon as that comes out and China kind of reduces or drops and creates an even playing field for the US and China to trade, I think that's just going to be incredibly bullish. And we're going to see continuation from there for both the SP 500 and for Bitcoin. So that's all I've got for you today. If you enjoyed, you want updates between videos, then make sure to follow me over on Twitter at 618_cowboy. If you're still here, you clearly care about your money, you're clearly in the right place to understand what's going on in the market. So do me a favor, smash the like button, leave a comment, turn notifications on, and I'll see you in the next one. I'm out. Peace.